When you look into the abyss of you not being here, did you do something that mattered? Did you contribute to the common good in a very meaningful way?
The way forward for us all is through the balance of wisdom, strength, and kindness.
Everyone remembers Jeff Speakman from The Perfect Weapon, the martial arts hero who made Kenpo famous. But nobody talks about what happened after the cameras stopped rolling. The diagnosis that nearly ended him. The treatment that broke his body. The 18 inches of tubes they put inside his stomach. His wife, Kim, had seen him survive Hollywood. She had seen him build schools across 20 countries. But watching him lose 80 pounds in a hospital bed was something different. Doctors gave him even odds. The real story of Jeff Speakman starts here. Jeff Speakman came into the world in 1958 in a quiet suburb outside Chicago, a place where people worked long hours, saved every penny, and rarely talked about dreams. The neighborhoods were simple and tough, and nothing came easy. His family had no access to elite training or expensive sports programs, so every step he took in athletics came from his own push. He grew up surrounded by people who believed in effort more than talent, and that shaped him early. At John Hersey High School, he had no special support system waiting for him. Yet he kept showing up on his own, building himself day after day. Little by little, Chicago's harsh winters and blue-collar rhythm carved discipline into him, and that discipline followed him into everything he touched. As he got older, he found diving almost by accident, and once he did, he studied it the only way he could. He watched others. He copied their movements. He broke down each dive in his mind. That was all he had. There was no coach standing beside him. Still, every morning at 5:30, he left home in the freezing dark and caught the bus to a nearby high school pool. Most mornings he trained alone, hearing only the echo of water and his own breath. Over time, those lonely hours added up. Soon he began breaking district and conference records that were never meant to fall without professional coaching. His success gave him his first real escape from the limits of his neighborhood, and those wins gave him hope that he could reach farther than most people he knew. Those records were more than medals. They were a doorway. They made college feel possible, even though money was tight and every path forward looked expensive. Speakman knew he had to earn it himself. So after high school, he worked. And he kept working. For 6 long years, he took whatever jobs he could find. Manual labor, service work, anything that paid. He traded free time for savings and comfort for patience. He kept his eye on college the whole time. And when he finally stepped into Missouri Southern State College, he brought that same work ethic with him. He studied psychology and added biology because he wanted to understand how the mind and body connect. He graduated with honors in 1983, carrying the belief that discipline in the mind could shape power in the body. After college, life could have gone in a predictable direction, but Speakman felt something different pulling at him. Around 1978, he discovered Japanese Goju-ryu karate after watching the show Kung Fu, and the moment he stepped into that world, it hooked him. His instructor, trained under Lou Angel, showed him a side of martial arts that was brutal and honest. Training was painful. Conditioning pushed him past what he thought his body could take, but he loved it. He loved the struggle and the feeling of slowly mastering something difficult. By 1980, he earned his black belt, something rare for a Western student, and soon he started teaching, turning his obsession into a calling. Training under Lou Angel brought a new level of intensity. The Sanchin Kata demanded slow, powerful movements that required every muscle to lock into place. Some days, he failed. At one second-degree test, He couldn't produce the tension the kata required, and he failed the exam. But he returned, pushed harder, and learned to embrace the discomfort that came with growth. He carried the idea that suffering shapes you, and he held on to that belief for the rest of his career. Eventually, he added American Kenpo to his path. Most fighters give everything they have just to master one style, but Speakman took on two at the same time. Under Ed Parker's circle and Larry Tatum, he began soaking up a system built on practical speed and fluid self-defense. It fit perfectly with his Goju-ryu discipline. By 1984, he earned his first-degree black belt in American Kenpo, and people in Parker's inner circle noticed how sharply he pushed himself. Over the years, he rose fast, and by 2013 he had earned ninth-degree black belts in both Kenpo and Goju-ryu. By 2022, he reached 10th degree in Kenpo. His entire life had been pushing toward mastery, and these ranks showed the weight of that journey. As he moved into teaching, he discovered that martial arts was not only about kicking or striking, but also about understanding the psychology behind every move. He taught students to visualize, to mentally rehearse before touching the mat. He helped them build confidence through repetition and clarity, and he believed deeply that martial arts could change people's lives long before it changed their fighting ability. His students felt that. They learned technique, but they also learned a mindset. When he began training under Senior Grandmaster Ed Parker in the late 1970s, something shifted again. Parker had a philosophy that martial arts should evolve. He believed nothing should stay frozen. Speakman sat in those private training sessions absorbing this idea, realizing that the beauty of Kenpo came from its ability to change with the world. Parker planted the early seeds of what would become Kenpo 5.0, and those lessons stayed with Speakman long after Parker passed in 1990. Before his death, Parker experimented with a structure he called the 16 and 20 system. It gave each belt level a clear set of techniques, 16 below brown belt and 20 above, for a total of 154. He tested it one time in 1989 at Brian Duffy's school in Austin. The idea never spread because Parker died before he could develop it fully. That unfinished system became a quiet weight on the shoulders of his advanced students, including Speakman, who later revisited those ideas while building Kenpo 5.0. Once Parker was gone, Speakman felt a responsibility to keep the art moving. Many traditionalists wanted Kenpo preserved exactly as it was taught, but Speakman believed that preserving something meant keeping it alive, not freezing it in the past. So he began modifying techniques, removing outdated ideas, and adjusting the system for modern reality. Some people pushed back, yet Speakman stayed committed because he felt Parker's message was clear. The world changes. Kenpo must change with it. During the 1990s and 2000s, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu exposed weaknesses in many traditional stand-up systems. Speakman and his top black belts trained with BJJ fighters and discovered that several Kenpo techniques actually put the practitioner in danger. Certain blocks opened angles for takedowns. Some counters left the defender off balance. If Kenpo fighters did not adapt, they would struggle in real fights. Accepting this truth was painful, but necessary. Speakman made the hardest decision of all. He removed about 25 techniques from the curriculum, ones that either failed against modern fighters or fed directly into a grappler's control. He reorganized the system, creating models for stand-up, ground defense, escapes, and transitions. Slowly, Kenpo 5.0 took shape, not as a rejection of tradition, but as a continuation of it. He honored the past while preparing martial artists for the present. Jeff Speakman never planned on being a Hollywood star. He was a martial arts instructor in Southern California, running a busy dojo and teaching Kenpo karate to hundreds of students every week. Acting was something he tried only because people kept telling him he had presence. So he took a few workshops and went to auditions that felt more draining than exciting. Most days he left with nothing. Some days he left with tiny roles that barely mattered. Still, he kept balancing teaching with small acting gigs because something in him wanted to see where it might lead. That slow, uncertain path changed when director Marc Dessal noticed him. Dessal had already shaped hits like Bloodsport and knew exactly what he was looking at. Speakman's blend of calm confidence and real skill pulled him in, and he insisted on filming a screen test. 2 scenes were shot, one dramatic and one filled with action, just to show that Speakman could do both without faking it. Paramount Pictures took a chance even though they rarely touched martial arts films, and by 1991 Speakman was suddenly leading The Perfect Weapon. He went from being a quiet instructor to a rising Hollywood name in less than 2 years. The Perfect Weapon arrived in theaters on March 15, 1991, and it was built to put American Kenpo karate on the big screen instead of the usual flashy movie tricks. The story followed Jeff Sanders, a construction worker who uses Kenpo to fight the Korean mafia in Los Angeles after his mentor is killed. Paramount wanted something strong enough to compete with the wave of martial arts films from studios like Warner Bros., so they put real money into this one. They even spent around $250,000 just to rework the script, so Speakman's martial arts were shown the right way. When the film brought in $11.8 million in the United States, the gamble paid off. People loved the realism, critics praised the choreography, and Speakman's presence made him stand out in a crowded action era. Speakman was careful about how the fights looked. He refused to trade authenticity for movie flair. He wanted real Kenpo techniques on screen, the kind that would actually work in a street fight. Working side by side with the stunt team, he helped shape every punch and every sequence. In the warehouse fight, the spinning elbow and the knife pull from an opponent's leg were both drawn straight from advanced Kenpo training. He leaned into Ed Parker's method, focusing on how physics and timing shape a fight. This attention to detail made the film feel honest and helped Speakman earn admiration from fans and martial arts experts around the world. Everything changed after that release. One moment he was teaching small classes in a studio, and the next he was being recognized on the street. Interviews, magazine features, TV appearances, and invitations to global events followed almost immediately. The sudden fame stunned him. His dojo enrollment shot up, and people outside the martial arts world started talking about him. Yet he stayed grounded, often returning to his students and teaching schedule even when Hollywood wanted more from him. But that quick rise came with traps. Studios wanted to turn him into another predictable action star. They saw him as someone who should fight on screen and do little else, pushing him toward roles with simple characters and endless action. Speakman wanted something deeper. He saw himself as a teacher who designed systems, not just a fighter in front of a camera. So while Hollywood tried to narrow him into a single lane, he began developing Kenpo 5.0, adding ground fighting and new tactics to match real-life situations. He focused on building a teaching legacy instead of chasing every movie script that crossed his desk. Still, the early 1990s pulled him back into film. After The Perfect Weapon, Warner Bros. Cast him in Street Night in 1993. They hoped it would push him forward again, but everything felt rushed. The budget was limited, the script was weak, and Speakman felt boxed into a suit and a role that had no room for creativity. Critics were harsh, calling the story convoluted and his acting stiff. The UK release went straight to video. He later shared how suffocating that experience felt and how clearly he understood that Hollywood was closing the door on martial arts leads like him. Even so, he pushed through the mid-1990s and took on films like The Expert in 1995, Deadly Outbreak, Running Red, and Escape from Atlantis. These productions were usually small and their budgets tight. The Expert, for example, was made for under $2 million. Speakman still did his own stunts and tried to bring life to characters that were often written thinly. Playing John Lomax in The Expert put him alongside actors like James Brolin. And even though reviews were mixed, his dedication to martial arts on screen kept him moving forward. Running Red gave him something new. As executive producer, he finally had control over what mattered most to him. He shaped the choreography, guided casting, and helped steer the film's structure. Working closely with director Jerry P. Jacobs, he tried to make the action feel personal, rooted in real technique rather than spectacle. The film did not make a huge theatrical impact, finding more life in video releases. But Speakman valued the creative freedom he rarely had in Hollywood. By the mid-1990s, the action world was changing fast. Studios wanted enormous blockbusters or futuristic stories filled with special effects. Martial arts films that sat in the middle were slipping away. Audiences leaned toward stars like Schwarzenegger and Stallone, while new trends grew from films like The Matrix in 1999. Speakman saw that the era that had created him was fading, and that the industry no longer had space for mid-tier martial arts heroes. So he shifted his center of gravity. His films mattered, but his real legacy began building far from Hollywood. In 1995, he founded the American Kenpo karate systems. It started as a bold step out of the single dojo world and grew into an international network. By the late 2010s, AKKS had more than 130 schools, becoming the largest Kenpo organization on the planet. His leadership turned seminars into global gatherings. In 1997 alone, over 500 martial artists from 7 countries attended his international Kenpo camp. He pushed not only technique, but discipline and leadership, offering programs like Street Night to guide at-risk youth. Between 2008 and 2018, he served as president of the International Kenpo Federation. Over 100 countries worked under that umbrella, and during his leadership, he helped unify different Kenpo groups and standardize systems across continents. International championships grew, certifications expanded, and the community became more connected than it had ever been. His diplomacy and steady approach earned him deep respect worldwide. Speakman's background in psychology shaped everything he taught. After graduating with honors in psychology in 1983, he blended behavioral management with martial arts, building ranking systems that paid attention to personal growth as much as physical skill. His methods influenced instructors around the world and even led him to teach defensive tactics to federal agencies like the DEA and FBI. Recognition followed. In 1993, he entered the Black Belt Hall of Fame as Instructor of the Year. The next year brought the World Martial Arts Hall of Fame. By 2009, the Masters Hall of Fame honored him as well. These awards reflected not only his skill, but his impact as a mentor and leader. His Kenpo 5.0 system continued spreading across the world. Through the 2010s and 2020s, his franchise schools reached more than 20 countries. By 2024, at least 13 countries had 51 active schools following his progressive curriculum. His online academy reached students who could not train in person, building a digital community that shared the same values of discipline and innovation. Jeff Speakman reached a point in his life where he looked at the art he had spent decades mastering and realized that some parts of it no longer belonged in the world he was living in. So he started by asking a simple question. If a student used a classic Kenpo move against someone trained in wrestling or Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, would it help them or hurt them? The answer came back again and again. It would hurt them. And once that truth landed, everything started shifting. He went through the old curriculum and saw that about 25 of the traditional techniques were no longer just outdated, they were dangerous. Some of them pushed students into movements that could get them caught, choked, or slammed to the ground within seconds. Moves like the charging ram family were designed decades ago for football-style tackles, not the takedowns used today. In a real fight, a student using that attack would probably end up inside a guillotine choke before they even understood what went wrong. Speakman knew that if he kept teaching these techniques, he would be setting students up to lose. So he began removing them, even though he knew many traditionalists would see it as an attack on history. But he pushed forward because he believed that keeping people safe mattered more than keeping the past untouched. And that decision became the first real cut that shaped Kenpo 5.0. As he moved through the list, the cuts became more deliberate. He brought in senior black belts, and they sat together for hours, sometimes late into the night, studying one move after another. They played out scenarios, tested angles, and asked what would happen if the opponent was stronger, faster, or skilled in grappling. Many old techniques fell apart under pressure. Some encouraged students to charge forward blindly. Others left the practitioner wide open for takedowns. The deeper they looked, the clearer it became that American Kenpo had holes that needed to be filled. Speakman explained that using some of these moves would actually help the opponent more than the practitioner, something he could not allow. As criticism grew, with purists accusing him of disrespecting Ed Parker's legacy, he kept reminding them that Parker himself preached evolution. Parker wanted the art to grow, not freeze in time. So Speakman kept going, committed to reshaping the system into something modern and alive. And while he was cutting old material, he was also building something new. Kenpo 5.0 became the first version of American Kenpo that seriously embraced ground fighting. Speakman and his team spent years studying how modern fighters moved once the fight hit the floor. They traveled, trained, and tested everything. They learned which escapes worked consistently, which strikes mattered, and how to transition from danger to control. But they did not simply borrow these moves from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. They rebuilt them so they matched Kenpo's rhythm, logic, and structure. So when a student fell to the ground or got dragged into guard, they knew exactly what sequence to follow. They could strike, escape, and stand up without breaking the system's flow. That kind of integration required Speakman to rethink almost every part of the curriculum. But he kept pushing because he wanted Kenpo to work not only in theory, but in living, breathing fights. As the system grew, he introduced something new to make everything feel connected. He called them combat models. Instead of teaching scattered individual techniques, he created full scenarios that moved like real fights. A student might start with a defense, flow into a counter, and finish with a clean reaction, all inside one coherent chain. The shielding hammer into 5 swords model became one of the most famous examples. It showed students how to defend, counter, and finish without stopping to think. In the same way, there were ground models designed for takedowns, escapes, and safe finishes. These models created a kind of mental roadmap, helping students learn how to adapt and solve problems as the situation changed. It was a shift away from memorization and toward understanding, and it made Kenpo 5.0 practical in a way earlier versions struggled to be. When it came time to give this evolution a name, Speakman looked back to Ed Parker's idea that Kenpo should grow in versions. He chose Kenpo 5.0 because it carried the message that the art had moved forward again. It honored Parker while carving out something completely new. It told people that this was not a branch or an offshoot. It was the next logical step. And Speakman made it clear that the system had to evolve, or it would disappear. Naming it Kenpo 5.0 was his promise that the art would never be trapped in one time period, no matter how many people resisted the change. Then life hit him with something far more personal. In early February 2013, doctors told him he had stage 4 throat cancer. The tumor sat inside his esophagus, already affecting his vocal cords. Surgery was too dangerous because it could permanently take away his voice, the thing he relied on to teach, motivate, and lead. So City of Hope doctors guided him into a brutal plan that mixed chemotherapy with 6 weeks of daily radiation. The cure rate for his specific cancer was over 90% at that hospital, and that gave him a thread of hope to hold on to. But the timing felt cruel. His next movie, something he had worked on for 3 years, had been funded on the same day he got the diagnosis. He began treatment immediately. Chemo drained him. Radiation burned him. Supplements from Partel Pharmacy helped a little, but the days grew heavier. Swallowing became painful. Eating became a chore. Strength faded. He later said he felt like he was standing close to death, unsure if his body would keep going. And while the physical pain was intense, the emotional weight hit just as hard. He faced the possibility of losing his voice forever. He faced the fear of not returning to the world he loved. He faced the idea that his time might be running out. During that time, he wrote an open letter to his Kenpo 5.0 family. He explained the diagnosis, the treatment, and the fear that lived inside him. People who always saw him as unbreakable realized he was human. His students rallied around him with prayers, support, and donations. In that moment, he let himself be vulnerable, something he had rarely done. And the connection it created changed him. It brought his community closer. It reminded him that strength was not just about fighting. It was about being honest with the people who stand beside you. As he recovered, he felt a shift inside himself. He described the experience as a near-death moment that rearranged his priorities. Fear had shaped too much of his life, and now he refused to let it guide him anymore. He wanted to make a real impact. He wanted to teach with more clarity. He wanted to help people live without holding back. Surviving cancer made him look at each day differently. It pushed him to open up, teach better, and give more of himself to his community. He had gone through 8 rounds of chemotherapy and weeks of daily radiation. He spent up to 8 hours a day in the hospital. He lost 80 pounds. Doctors had given him a 50-50 chance of survival. 18 inches of feeding tubes were placed into his stomach, but he made it through. And when he returned to martial arts events, people saw the same fighter, but with a deeper fire behind his words. His message became clear. Do not wait. Do not let fear stop you. Train now. Live now. Do not postpone the things that matter. He shared these lessons again and again in interviews. He reminded people that health is not promised. He told them that every training session could be their last, so they should give everything. His voice carried the weight of someone who had come close to losing everything and chose to fight back. His journey continued upward. On July 2, 2013, he was promoted to 9th degree black belt in Kenpo and Goju Ryu. Then, on July 9, 2022, he reached the 10th degree black belt, the highest honor in those arts. These ranks reflected decades of work, leadership, and sacrifice. They showed how far he had come from his early days as a struggling martial artist. After beating cancer, he turned even more attention to refining Kenpo 5.0. He wanted the system to stand strong long after he was gone. He worked with senior black belts to shape a curriculum that was practical, efficient, and built for the future. He made sure the system did not depend on a single person. He wanted it to grow on its own and evolve as new generations took over. That long-term vision helped Kenpo 5.0 become one of the most respected modern martial arts systems in the world. From Las Vegas, he built the largest Kenpo organization anywhere. His schools spread across 18 countries, each one carrying the strict standard he demanded. If a student did not meet the level he expected, they were removed immediately. His leadership kept the system strong and united. And through it all, the person who stood beside him was his wife, Kim. They lived in Las Vegas and traveled the world together. In 2025, they went to Paris for the European Championships. Over 200 martial artists from 15 countries came, and Kim handled the behind-the-scenes work while Jeff trained and tested students. Their marriage of over 30 years shaped everything he achieved. She guided logistics, mentored instructors, and helped organize charity events. Their partnership became a quiet engine behind his global influence. Every year, his World Martial Arts event in Las Vegas brought the community together. In 2025, more than 900 competitors from 25 countries filled the Rio Hotel and Casino. Students tested for belts. Kids joined new programs. A new event called 5.0 Grappling opened with over 120 matches. The live stream drew thousands online. Jeff led seminars, coached students, and built a culture that went beyond borders and languages. Even at 66, he kept teaching. He traveled across Europe and the United States, training students in France, Wales, New Mexico, and California. His seminars were packed, and many students described them as life-changing. His discipline kept him moving, and his dedication kept him relevant. And while people remember him for movies, he always insisted that his real legacy lived in the lives changed by Kenpo 5.0. More than 10,000 students had trained under his system. Some opened schools. Some became instructors. Some rebuilt their lives using the confidence they gained. His foundation brought Kenpo to underprivileged kids in the United States, Bolivia, Mexico, and Germany, with plans to expand to Australia and Chile. Students talked about how the system helped them escape bullying, addiction, and self-doubt. His legacy grew not through fame, but through transformation.